it's Katie Forstall back again and continuing on our series from my book. I did mention yesterday the name of my blog was rejectpornography.com, but I did forget to mention the title of the book, and it will be 10 Common Sense Reasons to Reject Pornography. And yesterday we read the introduction of the book, and I also talked about how I was a DBA student and how I've taken this research from my studies and I'm turning it into a book, and would love anybody who wants to help me co-write this, any connections, publishers, anything like that like what I'm saying. So without further ado, I'm going to go to chapter 1, and the first reason why to reject pornography, and to me probably the most important, is that children are being harmed by it. And I know you all care about that, if nothing else. So take a listen. Even if you're into pornography, this might help you to get out of it. Here we go. Chapter 1. First reason children are being harmed by it. Sex sells, or is it being sold to us? Are predatory marketing practices being broadcast through the mainstream to promote a pornified culture and infiltrate the minds of our youth, while priming some to become long-term customers and causing a market-driven demand, while dangling carrots of wealth and fame at others to fill the supply? Pornography is proven to be addictive and to trap young minds, damaging them extensively. In a sample of 30, this is a quote, in a sample of 30 juveniles who had committed sex offenses, exposure to pornographic material at a young age was common. The researchers reported that 29 of the 30 juveniles had been exposed to X-rated magazines or video. The average age of exposure was 7.5. End of quote. This is another quote. Research has also found that sexually reactive behaviors were most apt to be displayed not by children who had been sexually abused, but by those who had been exposed to pornography. End of quote. And here's another quote. Pornography is greatly influencing American youth. The largest users of porn are the age groups from 12 to 17. Porn producers are targeting adolescents. Porn has been called the new rock and roll. All of those quotes will be found, all the references will be found in the blog if you want to check them out. And that is the case throughout this study. If the players in and around the pornography industry are purposely aiming their targets at children who are not aware of the harms that may be caused to them because they are too young to understand the consequences of opening doors beyond their maturity level, or too uninformed to know that pornography is not sex education, if they are grooming them to become long-term consumers, then these businesses are engaging in predatory practices. Children are a vulnerable population and must be protected not only from the horrors of physical slavery and sex trafficking, but also from bondage brought on by hedonistic predators who are promoting the consumption of unhealthy products and attempting to normalize sex as a commodity, not only driving the demand, but attempting to fill the supply with young adults who have been deceived into believing that pornography is a viable career choice. Where did the boundaries go? The FCC was founded to protect the public from being flooded with obscenity. The Communications Act of 1934 was enacted by Congress to regulate communications inside the United States as a public convenience, as public convenience, interest, or necessity requires. In the past 45 years, and especially the last 3 decades, the boundaries have been pushed way beyond the limits. Individual freedoms are seeking to eliminate societal boundaries, and this is dangerous. In Notes on a Mass Culture from 1948, Irvin Howe was concerned about the consequences that certain comics were having. Quote, that they were little more than schematized abstractions of violence and sadism and would push children into premature adulthood. His concerns were not unfounded, as we can see a progression of predatory marketing in the media since then. Another quote, scores of online pornographers have embedded the names of popular children's toys in their websites so that internet users are directed to their site when searching for toys. Most children have encountered online porn, and 1 in 5 has been sexually propositioned by adults or other children forwarding porn to them. Some children's websites are besieged by pop-up ads for adult sites. It is not uncommon for children's video games to feature pimps, prostitutes, and the full nudity factor. End quote. Popular video games allow full frontal nudity, portray sex scenes, and even mimic the violence in porn films. One scene in Heavy Rain entitled Sleepless Night features nudity and comes just shy of rape. The narrative could be a duplicate of a porn film, except for the unrealistic escape. A God of War, Chains of Olympus sex scene entitled Two Girls and a Spartan depicts a threesome, as two naked girls frolic in bed before the Spartan comes in and takes control. Let's Play Dukem Nukem likes to visit strip clubs and kill the strippers. Grand Theft Auto has many nudity scenes in its series. And finally, number 1 is God of Sparta, which sports a full brothel with many naked women luring in their potential prey. These are all rated 17+, but there are other less explicit scenes in the 14+ that build the appetite for more, and common sense would tell us that 17+ barely legal games are getting into the hands of younger children. The music industry released a video that glamorizes pornography and prostitution and mainstreamed it, knowing that any child could come across it. Ice-T's song Pimp Anthem glorifies pimping women, is full of profanity, and gives instructions on how to be a pimp. Afro Man's song entitled Cult 45 turns the tables by making the man the harlot. The lead singer brags about prostituting himself with various types of women, including those from many different ethnic backgrounds, while sex-based profanity and lewd language is relentless throughout the whole tune. Network television series with a parental rating of TV 14 are named by Cosmopolitan Magazine's 10 hottest sex scenes on TV list for 2015. Do we not have a problem? Listed as number 9 in the series, How to Get Away with Murder, TV 14. The author of the article writes, a groundbreaking show, but a particular accomplishment was the extra jolt of sexual energy it injected in Thursday night's lineup on ABC, end quote. The scene this article portrays is of 2 homosexual men, one who is HIV positive. It claims to be a positive mood toward promoting this kind of relationship with so-called safe sex. The Fox series Empire makes number 3 on the list when there is an unexpected hookup with one of the show's main stars, Jay Papa, and a buxom woman named Becky. The author states that this scene demonstrates how hot, body-positive sex scenes are and how we need more of them on television. Number 1 on the list is Hannibal for another homosexual scene with 2 women. It is described as sensual, explicit, and artistically hot. Quote, watching sex on TV predicts and may hasten adolescent sexual initiation. A diet of TV high in sexual content was strongly related to initiation of intercourse and advancement of non-kosher activity levels in the following year. Watching the highest levels of sexual content effectively doubled the next year likelihood of initiating intercourse, end quote. Are 14-year-old children mentally prepared for this kind of so-called entertainment? Or is there an agenda behind this that is taking away our children's innocence? Interestingly, one gay lawyer thinks so. He makes a valid, though somewhat contradictory statement as he voices his opinion on Disney's new direction in his commentary in the Orlando Sentinel entitled Gay Attorney to Disney, Mature Beauty and the Beast Robs Kids' Innocence. And here's his quote. As a proud member of the LGBT community, I smile when shows I watch, such as NCIS New Orleans or How to Get Away with Murder, TV 14, include LGBT characters. But I'm an adult, and How to Get Away with Murder is light years away from stars versus the forces of evil. Somewhere along the line, Disney went off course. No longer did it see itself as a defender of children's innocence. Instead, it saw itself as a conduit to social change. Walt Disney became Harvey Milk. Primetime network television is geared for an adult audience, one that understands the world we live in. Adults have long lost their innocence, whether it be sex, drugs, or violence. Many of us had our eyes open to the hardships of the world. We lost our innocence when we grew out of adolescence, but do we really want our kids to lose theirs in adolescence? End of quote. That was from a gay lawyer who is a proponent of the LGBT community. And as I said, it's a little contradictory because he's talking about adolescence, but 14 is very close to adolescence. So, but he makes a good point there, and even he sees the problems in this. The rest of Cosmopolitan's top 10 list includes TVMA ratings, and soft porn is the norm. It is very likely that a percentage of those 14-year-old children who have been primed will continue to feed their hearts and minds with what the industry produces. One of those TVMA-rated programs, Showtime's Shameless, pulls at the heartstrings of young viewers by showing the plight of neglected children being raised by an alcoholic father, yet exploits them at the same time by following them in their sexual escapades and basically making some of them soft porn stars by showing the world the graphic details. Another quote, "To children, pornography is instructional, in that it provides a visual message about new information. However, that information is not an accurate portrayal of human sexuality. Photographs, videos, magazines, and virtual games which portray rape and dehumanization of females in sexual scenes are powerful forms of sex education. Unlike learning provided in an educational setting, exposure to pornography is counterproductive to the goal of healthy and appropriate sexual development in children. It teaches without supervision or guidance, inundating children's minds with graphic messages about their bodies, their own sexuality, and those of adults and children around them." End quote. And that brings us into damaging the adolescent brain. I'll probably end on this note at the end of this part of the chapter because it's a lot to take in. So here we go. Damaging the adolescent brain. There are various studies that confirm the fact that the brain is vulnerable during childhood and adolescence. An article written by Jay Geed of Scientific American entitled "The Amazing Teenage Brain" is based on many studies he has done in his role as Director of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry at University of California, San Diego, and his career as a child and adolescent psychiatrist. The exuberant growth during the pre-puberty, this is a quote, "The exuberant growth during the pre-puberty years gives the brain enormous potential. The capacity to be skilled in many different areas is building up during those times, but the pruning down phase is perhaps even more interesting, because our leading hypothesis for that is the use it or lose it principle. Those cells and connections that are used will survive and flourish. Those cells and connections that are not used will wither and die. So if a teen is doing music or sports or academics, those are the cells and connections that will be hardwired. If they're lying on the couch or playing video games or MTV, those are the cells and connections that are going to survive." End quote. Studies also show a clear case for addiction. Quote, "The teen brain's reward center has a response 2 to 4 times more powerful than the adult brains, which means teen brains release higher levels of dopamine in response to natural rewards." End quote. And another quote, "The adolescent brain prunes back neural circuitry by adulthood to make responses more efficient. This process makes it more difficult for them to choose things other than the patterns they've set when they reach full adulthood." Another quote, "Researchers believe that pornography's intense stimulation of the brain brings about significant changes to the brain similar to drug addiction." And another quote, "Teens are at great risk of developing a pornography addiction as their brains are still developing." And there's one more quote, and I know this is a lot of quote, but I'm not the expert here. These are psychologists and people who study the brain. So the last one's a longer one. The immature brain is more vulnerable to addictions of many types. Many pornography addicts speak of becoming addicted during their adolescence. Developing intimacy skills is an important part of adolescent male psychosexual development, as it is in this way that sex and love are brought together, allowing successful and satisfying adult relationships. Pornography, however, is about emotional distance, self-gratification, often at the expense of another's pain and objectification, polar opposites of what a teenage boy needs most to learn. Pornography has the power to leave a young man without the most essential tools he needs to achieve emotional and sexual maturity. And I'm going to go a little farther than that after all. Coming in through the back door is my next little section here. All of this subtle preparation is priming young minds and increasing demand, which will inevitably lead to increased sex trafficking and greater danger to our children. It will also lead to a desensitizing of sex and morality, leading more of our young women and men to see pornography as a lucrative career choice without truly understanding the consequences of the choices. The pornography industry has a high demand, and it is inconceivable to believe that a continuous supply will be available without grooming the minds of future generations to accept the commodification of sex as just another business with people as its products. As one porn producer puts it, quote, "The next generation of porn consumers and producers alike may break with the Puritan mindset. The teenagers who grew up with the cable and the VCR come to the table already saturated with sex," says Brian Pryor. "They've never known a time without Calvin Klein ads in MTV. By the time they see porn, they've already seen so many naked people, they're pre-jaded." End quote. This is the subtle coercion that is taking place through advertising and the entertainment industry. Maybe it's time to coerce them back to the truth that will set them free. And this is a quote, and I'm going to end with this one, that is more, again, going back to the idea of freedom and how important it is to have a difference between individual rights and societal rights. So this quote says, "The perils of using organic metaphors to justify the coercion of some men by others in order to raise them to a higher level of freedom have often been pointed out, but what gives such plausibility as it has to this kind of language is that we recognize that it is possible and at times justifiable to coerce men in the name of some goal, let us say justice or public health, which they would, if they were more enlightened themselves, pursue, but do not, because they are blind or ignorant or corrupt. It is one thing to say that I may be coerced for my own good, which I am too blind to see. This may, on occasion, be for my benefit. Indeed, it may enlarge the scope of my liberty. Children, although they are not coerced, are not slaves, because they obey orders given in their own interests, and that the subject of a true commonwealth is no slave, because the common interest must include his own." So we have to understand that children are not ready for all of this, and that it is being thrown at them, and we need to be more aware. And I think we need to do something about our media and the ways that it's being seeped in, the predatory marketing practices. I'm going to go tomorrow into the rest of the chapter and start talking about sex trafficking and pornography and the link between the two. Thanks for listening, and stay with me. And I know there's a lot of really deep stuff here, so go to the blog if you didn't quite understand what I was saying, and you might have to read something over and over again, like that last quote, to really get it, but it's powerful. So thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.